And it is my own mother, Sue Griffin.
Oh,
Sue!
Yeah, who's connect? Who's got the riling that Sue can get on? Come on now. Up next is Sue Griffin and her fantastic writing partner, Heidi Giovanni, with an excerpt from their two-woman show that they're writing, Widows Gone Wild. The ups and downs, the ins and outs of your husband dying. Ladies and gentlemen.
And to Carol Reel in faraway New York City, thank you again for another utterly brilliant puncher.
And once again, you will be widow number 1, and I will be widow number 2. Memories, like the corners of my mind, misty watercolor memories of the way we were.
Scattered pictures.
It's okay, they get it. Have you ever watched the in memoriam section of an award show and found yourself saying, oh no, he died? Oh, no, she died.
Or our personal favorite, he or she was still alive?
How do you pay tribute to a loved one who's no longer there? You can remember the day you met, the wedding day, and also the day you died. As it happens, both our husbands died during the month of February.
So I'm sorry, what is today's date?
February 7th.
Tomorrow is the 25th anniversary, I guess that's the word for it, of the day that Dennis died.
Ed's anniversary was years after Dennis's, and much later in February. Ed happened to die on a federal holiday, President's Day, February 21st, 2011. Turns out, Ed had the day off, and he needed to go shopping for a new pair of pants. So he drove to Century City Mall, his favorite mall. But unfortunately, the parking structure was full. So he was turned away, pantsless. But that meant he got to come home and do 2 of his favorite things in the world. Wash his car while listening to his radio headphones. Uninterrupted NPR, radio talk shows, and a pristine car. This was Ed's kind of holiday. Unfortunately, later that evening, he suffered a massive heart attack.
Unlike Ed, who was up and running until he wasn't, Dennis died after what obituaries sometimes refer to as a brief illness. I met Dennis on August 13th, 1983. My wonderful forever friends, John and Caitlin, were having a party at their apartment in a neighborhood on the west side that was then terrifyingly dangerous and is now terrifyingly expensive. I wasn't gonna go, because what was the point? I had been dumped by my most recent boyfriend several months earlier. It's not like I was gonna meet anybody nice, because there are no nice guys in Manhattan, then and now. Of course, I went to the party. Of course, I spent the entire day trying on and rejecting outfits. I did like what I ended up wearing. Tight, low-cut, purple, nubby wool sweater, jeans, and my fuck me pumps. I wish I'd kept that sweater. It would be so fabulously vintage now. I was in a theater company with John and Caitlin, and one of the actors from that company, upon whom I had a wicked crush, was at the party, and so was Dennis. And despite the fact that I distinctly remember when I first saw Dennis thinking, is that Heathcliff glaring at me so seductively? Nonetheless, I did go home with the other guy that night. Because it was the 80s and that's what we did. But it felt so good to be so young and so firm everywhere. Let's call the other guy Chris. His name is actually Robert. Let's go with Chris. Dennis never let me forget that I left with someone else that night.
Dennis loved to tell that story. But back to President. Now, the confusing thing about trying to pay tribute to Ed Cannon on the exact day that he died is that President's Day falls on a different day each year. This year is February 19th. And just to magnify the confusion, his death certificate lists the date of death as February 22nd because the paramedics arrived at the hospital after midnight. So officially, he died on February 22nd. Now, over the years, when I have received condolence calls from family and friends, I used to try to explain to them that they were probably calling on the wrong day, thereby confusing everything. So now, I pay tribute to Ed all week long, starting on President's Day, whenever that day is, by watching his favorite Turner Classic World War II movie that he introduced me to. It was the one about the men who fought on PT boats in the Pacific. Bizarrely titled, They Were Expendable. I realize saying those words, how inappropriate that is as a tribute. If you knew Ed, you would definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Classic Ed. Okay, so now back to my 1980s indie film Meet Cute. Some men might have had their confidence a little shaken by watching me waltz out of a party with another guy right in front of them. Not Dennis. John and Caitlin invited Dennis and me to dinner at their place that very same week, just the four of us. So no other crush for me to be distracted by. And that time it took. I brought Dennis home with me that night, and he basically never left. I mean, until he died and stuff. I saw Chris on an episode of Law and Order recently. He hasn't really aged all that well. Then again, neither is Dennis. Too soon.
As Bob Hope used to sing, thanks for the memories. Oh, where's Bob Hope when you need him?
Also dead. And also definitely not expendable.
Kind of the theme for this evening.